Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Talia Reynolds, and I am the Membership and Events Coordinator with WorldDenver, and I also manage our Young Professionals program. So the WorldDenver Young Professionals are a community of early to mid-career professionals with a passion for global affairs and a desire to connect with like-minded people across Denver through networking, education, community service, and professional development. If you're interested in learning more about us, you can visit our website at worlddenver.org. And it is really and truly our pleasure to present this afternoon's panel event on going from a global education to a global career in partnership with StudyColorado. I would now like to introduce our moderator, Inta Morris. Inta serves as the Chief Operating Officer and Deputy Director of the Colorado Department of Higher Education, as well as the Director of StudyColorado. Through her work, she supports and advocates for the importance of building international education programs into Colorado's colleges and universities. Thank you all so much for attending our panel event this afternoon. And without further ado, I will hand things over to Inta.
Thank you, Talia. And thank you to WorldDenver for this really great event today. As Talia said, I'm with the Colorado Department of Higher Education and also run a program called StudyColorado. And through StudyColorado, we seek to promote international education. And we work a lot with international students coming here, with students going abroad, but really we're trying to promote international education and international ties. So this panel today, I'm really excited. I hope you are too. We have great panelists who are going to tell us about their global careers. All of them started here in Colorado. All of them have degrees from Colorado. And I too actually got my undergraduate degree here in Colorado in international affairs, and then went off to DC and to other places before I ended up coming back to Colorado. But I have enjoyed a global career and really thank my education at the University of Colorado for getting me started. So I'm really excited to hear about all these other pathways that folks have taken, and I hope you're excited too. Before I introduce the panelists, we're going to kick things off with a short video from one of our panelists. It is 2 a.m. in Shanghai, China, so we decided not to make Hans get up at 2 a.m. Rather, he provided a video. I think this will set the stage for our conversation really nicely. So let's start with a video from Hans von Meister. He is in Shanghai, China, and he'll tell you how he got there. So Talia, if you can share the video.
Hello everyone, my name is Hans and I'm sending this video to you from Shanghai, China. I'd like to thank the Colorado Department of Higher Education for putting on this informative and inspirational event. I'm upset that I'm unable to attend, but hopefully I can share some of my experiences which can help frame the panel a little bit. So for those of you that don't know, I graduated in 2009 from CU Boulder with degrees in mathematics and Chinese studies. And a lot of the experiences that I had at the school really profoundly impacted my life. The first one that I can think of was volunteering at the It's Elementary program, which allowed me to go into Boulder County elementary schools to teach Chinese history and Chinese culture. And secondly, studying abroad. I was fortunate enough to spend some time in Europe and in Asia during my studies. And now for the last 7 years, I've actually been working on a startup where we teach debate and public speaking to schools and students all around Shanghai. So obviously cross-cultural communication has been a very important part of my life. The experiences that I had as a student, both working with the faculty and my classmates, really opened my eyes to how big of a world it is and how important it is to be able to communicate effectively and efficiently through all sorts of different mediums with people that have all sorts of different backgrounds. So hopefully today the panel discussion will cover a lot of interesting topics that can kind of get everyone thinking a little bit about what positions they'd like to take, what experiences they'd like to choose that will have the same impacts and lead you down some exciting new journeys, just like one that has left me here in China now for the last 12 years. So looking forward to a great panel, and hopefully once everything kind of chills out a little bit, I'll be able to meet some of you in person and talk about this important topic.
Great, thank you, Hans, and we will send out a thank you all the way to Shanghai to Hans for setting the stage for us. So we have with us today 3 other Colorado graduates. Our 4th is unfortunately unable to join us, but we have 3 folks here who went to school in Colorado and then went on to global careers, very different careers. So you're gonna hear some different pathways and different directions that people have taken. But again, the common thread here is that our panelists enjoyed an education in Colorado. They went from not necessarily a global education, actually, I should say, even though the name of this panel is global education, you'll learn that sometimes it wasn't necessarily an education in international something that led to their global career. But let me welcome the panelists. If you can show yourselves, and we will get started with some good discussion. Great. There we go. Super. Okay, so I want to welcome Lindsay Kruger. And Lindsay Kruger she went to Regis, and we'll tell you about that a little bit, and now has her own company, which is really fascinating, where she's helping folks who live in poverty. Lindsay's going to tell you about that. She has a fascinating career. Hawa is joining us all the way from Mali, and she will tell you how she got to Mali and what she's doing in Mali. And then we have Melvin, who is in Washington, D.C. right now. He spent a lot of years working both in and with Africa, and really has similarly a fascinating career. Melvin got his undergraduate degree at Western. At the time, I think it was Western State College, and now it's Western Colorado University. But 3 really fascinating career pathways. So I'm going to start, Hawa, if I may, with you. You have a degree in project management for development. I wonder if you could first tell us what exactly does that mean? How is that different from project management or simply development studies? And then maybe describe a little bit the work that you're doing in Mali right now.
Thank you very much, Linda. Hello, everyone. My name is Friballi, and I currently work as a project assistant for the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance in Mali. So the work that I do is really interesting in a sense that I had my master's degree from the University of Denver in conflict resolution, and I thought that I wanted to do public forum mediation, coming back to Mali. And then the more that I analyzed, the more I realized that what I really wanted to do was project management. And so I discovered project management for development, which is a little unique in a sense that the projects that are designed and implemented are designed to address poverty, inequality, and injustice. And it's often done in contexts that are highly volatile, with social, political, and economic instability, which is exactly what's going on in Mali. And it's a fast-paced environment in terms of the management of a project lifecycle, because I arrived in Mali in September 2019, and I've already participated to designing, implementing, and ending a project. And while we do that, we also design new projects. So it's really fast-paced, and it's always readjusting and conducting conflict analysis and gender analysis to inform activities, and also assess the risk and the impact. Because really what project management for development is that we work with target population, and the biggest thing that we do is to transfer knowledge. And the learning that happened through the process of implementation is the most important part of the work that we do. Thank you.
For that, Hawa. We will come back and hear more about that. Let me turn to a second to Lindsay. So Lindsay, you actually got your undergraduate degree in, I think it was architectural design, and then somehow ended up now where you are today, working globally. How did that happen? How did you go from having your a degree and a career in interior design to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So I got my undergrad and my master's degree both in Colorado. My undergrad was in interior design, and then I spent about 17 years doing interior architecture and running a small firm that did that. And then I started working over in Nepal on actually schools. It was all construction related, and realized the need for housing there and significant resilient housing that's secure, and ended up starting a nonprofit. It's called NGOs, which means home in Nepali. And NGOs assists marginalized women-led families who are experiencing extreme to medial poverty, and we help them achieve home ownership. And by doing that, the journey gives us opportunities from building capacity in the confidence of the homeowner, to training local tradespeople in resilient construction, to bridging understanding between the communities and the ostracized families, and creating lots of good paying jobs. So our work was focused in Nepal, and I was about 2 years into that organization being up and running when I realized I really need some help in understanding what's all going on here, because we kind of had the luck of working in communities that had already developed leadership in these programs. So we lucked out in not messing up the whole thing, because they were definitely the leaders. And so we were able to just really support them. But I knew, like, if this thing is going to get off the ground, I really need to get a stronger background in what we're doing here. So that's when I joined the Regis MDP, and that really helped inform the work a lot. And we've been able to have a lot of great success since then.
And just a quick follow-up. So you stopped what you were doing and went on to get your master's degree, or did you continue working? How did that go?
That's kind of the cool thing about the Regis MDP, actually. So I moved to Kathmandu and applied to Regis at the same time, and lived there the entire time I did my master's. So I was able to be in the villages and be in Kathmandu while doing the MDP. And it really helped. Honestly, I use what I learned in that program and on a daily basis with running the organization.
That's fantastic. I bet that made for pretty easy paper writing when you're living what you're learning at the same time.
Yeah, there was a lot of hypothetical projects we were supposed to work on that moved from hypothetical to reality really quickly.
That's great. Ben, let's turn to you a little bit. So I am very intrigued at how you went from going to school at Western, which is in Gunnison, Colorado, to having this long and really successful career with Africa. Is that what you envisioned when you were at Western, or how did that whole career fall into place for you?
Absolutely not. I'm from Rockford, Illinois originally, which is about 75 miles northwest of Chicago. And by going to school, I went to school in Colorado to play basketball. And so I got a scholarship at Western State. And back then I was looking for adventure. So I said, I'm gonna go as far away from home as I can. And that ended up being Gunnison, Colorado. Now, going to Gunnison was about as shocking as going to Africa. So for me, it's about adventure. So I was in Colorado. In addition to playing basketball, I used to write for the school newspaper. I had a column called The Back of the Bus. They really telling the Western State community about Black Americans and Black people. Every week I wrote about Black people. And so I got a note from a guy who went to Ghana as a Peace Corps volunteer, and he fell in love with a Ghanaian woman and wanted to marry her, and he wanted my opinion about interracial marriage. So we met and talked about that. I said, what is this Peace Corps? He told me about the Peace Corps, and sure enough, I put in my application, and I said, I want to go to Africa. I didn't know anything about Africa, but I wanted to go. So a couple months later, I got a letter back saying, you've been accepted and you're going to Ethiopia. Well, I only knew about Ethiopia from the Bible. I knew about Bethlehem and Jerusalem and Ethiopia. And I said, I don't want to go to the Middle East. So, you know, you couldn't Google back then. So I went to the library, found the atlas, and saw a map of Africa where Ethiopia was in the heart of Africa. So that's how I found out I was going to Africa. Now, I had no idea where I was going or what I was going to. Only thing I knew about Africa was the Tarzan movies. So I was expecting a Tarzan to be at that airport to take us to the village on a herd of elephants. You know, so with the shock, I landed in Ethiopia, and they got an airport just like they got an airport in Denver and anywhere else. So that's how I got started. I went there with open mind, and I went there looking for, you know, I was in the middle of a war. I mean, it was just, I'm working on my book now, and I won't talk about it too much because I want you guys to buy the book. But a lot of it had to do with the willingness to take a risk, willingness to understand that the world was round. I had lack of information. I had no one, even at Western, who could tell me about anything global. And so I went on just a total sense of this is what I want to do. I'm 22 years old, and you know, I'm ready to see the world. And that's how I got it. I've been involved ever since. I've been involved, you know, in addition to work in Africa for 7 years. I'm working in Washington, lobbying really for Africa and the United States. So a lot of my work is about educating Americans about Africa, influencing members of Congress to make sure Africa gets its fair share. And, you know, I impact very profoundly on U.S.-Africa policy.
That's great. I think I can say that probably at Western today, they have a little bit more awareness of global affairs. It's still, for some people, on the other, you know, it's on the other side of the state, but wonderful town. And I think they've sent a few more people overseas since you left there. Let me come back to Hawa. So, and I'm going to pick up on something that Melvin just said, that it's about working globally is about taking risks. Certainly, there's a lot of times I've had when I've traveled to new countries or met people from other cultures where I'm not always certain of myself, not certain of you know, confidence is a big thing, and willingness to take these risks. So I wonder for you, what has it been like? Have you always been certain of your direction? Or how have you, if you haven't been, how have you gotten through some of these situations where it might be a little bit unsure of what you're doing and where you are? And you need to unmute yourself. How are you still muted? Hang on, let's see if we can get you unmuted. All right, Talia, behind the scenes there, we need some help with Hawa's microphone. And let's try once more. If not, we can come back to you in a second. Okay, we'll work on that. I'm going to come back and I want you to answer that question. We'll come back to you in once. Oh, I think you're good. Go ahead, try now. No, we're still not hearing you. Okay, let me switch to Lindsay and then we'll come back. And sort of a similar question to you, Lindsay, along the lines of you said you realized that you needed to get some further background. Talk a little bit about what it's like being in a different country, unsure of yourself, unsure of whether you have the skills, and in your case especially, you were embarking sort of on a whole different direction. How do you get past that feeling of uncertainty?
I don't know that you ever do. I think that uncertainty is always going to reside as long as you are working with communities that are different from your own community, but it's learning to work with it and go into it and learning to work with the communities and let them lead you into figuring out like how the collaboration works and what you can bring to the table. And like Melvin said, just always having an open mind is the best approach that you can ever have when working globally. I think in the beginning there was so much potential for failure in how we were doing it because we were you know, just showing up in this remote villages in the Himalayas, kind of near Everest. But we were so open-minded and approached it with a sense of curiosity and let the people lead us, and just asked a lot of questions and kept our eyes open. But I think you build the confidence even without having to know everything that's going on around you. You're just like, you know that what you're offering is needed, as long as you know that, then, and you can feel that from who you're working with, then you know that you're valuable and you can be confident in that, even if you're not 100% confident in everything that's going on around you.
That's great. And I'm still going to go back to Hawa after we fix these technical difficulties. Hawa,
Hello.
there we go. Okay, same question back to you. You certainly seem the epitome of confidence there before us today. I'm just wondering, has that always been the case, or what's it like to be in a different country, different culture, and how have you gotten over that?
Thank you for the question. No, I have absolutely not. And to be completely honest, I'm still not. I was asking tips and advice to Melvin, I think 2 days ago, about how to speak in public. But my experience is that I had to come to accept that I was gonna be uncomfortable and learn to manage that uncomfort. So I graduated, I was born and raised in Mali. And after high school, I decided to study in the United States. And when I left for the first time, I had no idea what I was gonna do. I knew I wanted to work and give back to my community, but I had little understanding of what that was gonna look like in terms of career path. And I'm really thankful because I met great teachers and mentors and course mates who really helped me grow into the person that I am today. For instance, I remember my second quarter in grad school at the University of Denver. I took a project management class, and it was really challenging for me because we were doing desk research. And for someone like me who have lived in Mali and had grown up in Mali, I knew that the context and a lot of situations were different from what I was being confronted in school. And I was really shy. I couldn't really raise my hand and challenge the teacher and say, hey, no, I know better. Or I have seen things done, I've seen things being done differently. But I think that what really helped me is the network of people and the community around me who always believed in me. And for instance, when I wouldn't dare to dream, they dreamed with me. They were really supportive and trust me in what I wanted to do. When I said that I was gonna come back in Mali and work to implement the peace process, I had no idea that I would work at the Geneva Center for Security Sector Governance, but my mentor told me, you got the skills, you have the tools. I've seen you go to webinars and conferences and really working. And that was really helpful in terms of becoming who I am today, which is what I would advise to anyone who wants to pursue an international career, is to be okay with uncertainty. It's something that is very common in the line of work that we do. And really to also understand that what we learn in school cannot be applied as it is. Every context, every situation is very specific. So you might learn tools in school, you might learn skills. However, when you go to certain communities, there is a unlearning that needs to happen to relearn, to build with the community. Because in the development nexus today, we talk a lot about endogenous solution. For instance, in Mali, we always talk about how the state needs to find solution with traditional governance mode. And how is that done? It's done through dialogue. It's done through mediation. And really, I can say that because I studied outside of Mali, there are a lot of subtleties that I learned to sense. For instance, when the Black Lives Matter movement started in the United States, and I started reading about it, I could see the similarity in terms of patterns with what was going on in Mali with police brutality. And today, as I work with, we work specifically in training police forces and military on security sector governance, and we also train media on public oversight of the governance structure. And oftentimes, when you have the two groups together in the same room, there are clashes that happen. And how do we deal with that is really interesting, because it's a matter of communicating in a way that we understand where the other person comes from. But you can do that better when you bring yourself outside of the context.
Yeah, that very well said. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And you actually made me think back to when during college I studied abroad as well, and I had to myself come to terms with I am not going to speak perfectly. And for me, I mean, I'm the office grammarian here today. I want everything to be perfect, and to realize that it's okay to make a mistake and it's okay to not have everything be perfect. That took a lot, but there a lot of lessons learned. And I'm impressed that you studied abroad, or did more than study abroad, that you came here as a student. I think that takes a lot of guts too. We, as I said at the start, we work with students from all over the world here in Colorado, and every single one of them, I'm impressed. You know, that took so much guts to just come as a student to a new country and new culture by yourselves in most cases. Melvin, let me a little bit more from you. So if you were to look back at your career, is there anything you would do? Whoops, and he just disappeared. If you can still hear me, Melvin, is there anything that you would do differently, or are there any words of advice that you would give to others who are in the early part of their career and wanting to work globally? Any lessons you learned and advice that you would give to others?
Yeah, can you see me or no? Okay. Well, a couple things. First of all, I appreciate what Lindsay and Howard had to say, and I agree with them fully on that. You know, for me, it was about finding my niche, and now I've become an expert at niche finding. And I found out that I could be the connector between Africa and America. I could be an African American. I can relate to Africans and I can relate to Americans. It's very important when you're in other cultures that you respect them. I don't care if the village woman in the market. Some of the most powerful people I know are market women, you know. And you know, and if you go there and think, oh, this woman had their old dress on or something like that, man, you know, you're setting yourself up for failure. And so a big part of this is learning to live with people, you know, and learning the world is round, and no matter what we say politically about all this stuff, the reality is we all got, you know, 2 eyes, we got 2 feet. We got this thing called skin, but it's not much different between us. And so once you come to understand that, you start to become, and so what I felt when I first went to Africa, that I could come back and be a veteran American, you know. While I was in Africa, I learned about environmental stuff. I'm very concerned when I see people waste water. I'm very concerned when I see people waste food. I'm very concerned about a lot, you know, we over here thinking we got it bad because I'm from a poor family in Illinois. But the reality is I'm one of the wealthiest Black people in the world, you know? And so some of this stuff you start to understand globally what it means to, you know, and so when I see young people, one, I think the world is round. If one wants to limit themselves to their local community, born there, raised there, stay there, man, that's a limiting factor, you know? And I would tell young people, think globally, think about international, learn other languages, learn other cultures. To me, it's the most rewarding aspect of life, is that we become more than what we were brought up to be. When I go home to Illinois sometime and visit with my old friends I grew up with, they don't believe that I've done what I've done. They look at me like, wow, you know, I'm walking around with people like Nelson Mandela, you know. They can't believe that I'm doing what I'm doing because they stayed in that little narrow box called Rockford, Illinois, and never ventured out. So I think for young people growing up now, attach yourself to, because of the global community now, you can easily get information. The fact that we're on a video cam now and from all over the place having this conversation is indicative of what anybody in the world can do. At any given day, I'm talking to 3 or 4 continents, and don't even think twice about it. Howard is sitting in Bamako, and we're just like we're neighbors. We could be in the house next door. So I would just tell people to be courageous. Think about stepping out of the box. Challenge yourself as a young person. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to have to learn another language. Challenge yourself to have to learn another culture. That's my. We could talk about this all day, but that's generally what I'm thinking about.
I agree. We could talk about that all day, and I agree 100%. I wish everyone would learn another language. Let me just ask you a quick follow-up. Is there anything, well, I mean, first of all, walking around with Nelson Mandela, very cool, very jealous. Is there anything that you would do different if you could?
Absolutely not. I graduated from Western State in June. In July, I was headed to Ethiopia, blindly, not having any idea what I'm going to see at that airport. My father said, "You're going to get eaten by a lion." I was saying, maybe. I didn't know the difference. I didn't know if he was right or not. And I didn't want to tell him that, well, I don't know. But I went there thinking that I might well get eaten by a lion at the airport. So if you ask me would I do anything different, heck no. Heck no. I graduated from Western about 50 years ago now. And wow, would I change anything? There's a lot of little details I would work out. But overall, I would have said I made the right choice. I was on the right track and I was on the right train, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. The overall concept of where I've been in my career, I would not change it that for the world. And I'm able now, I mean, I've been my own boss for many years. I wake up in the morning and decide what I want to do. My organization is small. I prefer to work with a small organization. I see myself as a speedboat, where some of the other organizations are like battleships. It takes them 3 weeks to turn around. For me, it takes about 10 minutes. I could change the agenda in about 10 minutes. And, I prefer, so I've gotten to be my own self. I call my own shot. I define my own career. I don't ask a lot of people about a lot of things. I decide myself what I want to do on a daily basis. So I wouldn't change. No, I wouldn't change anything.
That's fantastic. If everyone could say that, we would have a lot of happy people in this world. Lindsay, back to you. Whoops. So I'm curious, do you feel like would you change anything about your education? Do you feel like you got what you needed in your education to support what you're doing today? Or do you see yourself going back for anything further? Just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess I love the education I got. I think that it was the program was very hands-on, practical application of assisting people living in these different regions of the world. But the reality behind nonprofit work is that it takes a lot of funding and support outside of that to really back whatever programs that you're trying to implement. So I guess if I were to go back to school, it would be around how do we engage a larger audience? How do we bring more people along for this ride? Because like my background is construction and my family's in construction and my whole previous life was there. So I get that. I know how to do that. And the Regis helped me learn how to do it in this other context. But how do you fund it? How do you support all of this? And they do touch on that in some ways, and Regis does have other programs that focus on that. So if I were to go back, which hopefully I'm not doing, it would be to learn about engaging this large audience in support of the mission that you're on. So that would be the one thing I would add. But I'm 42. I don't know if I'm going to sign up for another program.
I hear you. But that's a good point. I think that, that's the ongoing challenge of nonprofits. And so much of what we do globally is through the nonprofit world, and funding is always a challenge. And I've worked in nonprofits too, and it's a big challenge. Hawa, let me turn to you again a little bit, and I'm curious, how has living in the United States and in Mali, going to school here, growing up there, now back there working, how has your view of the world changed by living in two different, and maybe you've even lived in other places, I'm not even sure, but how do you think your perspective has changed? Do you view your own country differently, or do you view the United States differently from having lived in both places?
I would say yes. I definitely see Mali a little bit more differently. So I've had this conversation with some of my friends who went back in their country. One of my great friends lives in Egypt, and we were talking about cultural shock, which is something that happened to a lot of international students, is that when you live in the United States for so long, you don't notice, but there are little things, little behaviors or patterns. For example, for me, it was the coffee, right? Like I would wake up and get Starbucks and go to class. And when I came back in Mali, the temperature is a little different. So drinking hot is not a good idea. But so it's those little things that you miss, right? About the place that you used to live, or just the fact that I would take the bus, and the public transport system in Denver to me was great. Some people might say it's not, but I loved it. And so coming back to Mali, it's a little bit more challenging. So little things like that, but most importantly, is the way that you see social dynamics. It opens your eyes, right? Like you see a lot of differences and similitudes in people. For instance, in Mali, people would ask me, "Oh, how is the United States? How do people live there?" And it's challenging for me to answer. It's the same way that it's challenging for me to tell my American friends how living in Mali is, because I don't know, I find it to be the same thing. Like human beings are human beings. But it's just about how you deal with it. So you build skills and you grow in the sense that your brain works faster, I would say. It's like there are certain circumstances where you understand when you see, for instance, people on the street looking for places, you go towards them because you understand what it is like to be lost in a new country. So you want to help them. It builds empathy toward people who are not home. And there is also this sense of belonging, right? That it's really challenging once you've been out there in another country and lived for so long, when you have places that you call home, but really home is not home anymore. So I would say that it's great in the sense that it opens your horizon, right? I make so many friends, so many people around the world that I can connect with and talk to. And for instance, in project management, that's great because we are always comparing and contrasting about what's working there versus what's not working here. But really, I would say that, yeah, it's really challenging to call one place home after you've been living in two places. Yeah.
I want to give Lindsay and Melvin a chance to comment on that too. We talk about culture shock, but I think, as you suggested, there's culture shock and then there's reverse culture shock. And I think often coming back to your own country after you've been abroad, that's when you really start to recognize some of the oddities, or you're more aware of your own culture, and that can sometimes be even more shocking. Lindsay, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I actually, this is so severe that I actually started stopping in another country on my way back just to buffer that shock, because I don't have the opportunity to do that every time, but it's so shocking coming back. To me, it's almost worse returning back to the US, because when you're going to a new country, it's so exciting, and everything you're capturing is just like, wow, people drive like this, and there's cows in the street, and it's really fun, and you're really into it. And then you come back and Denver feels like a ghost town and there's no one in the street and no one walking down the sidewalk. And you're it's almost depressing for a second. You're like, whoa, what happened? So I tried to start stopping somewhere else on the way, like, okay, now it's not so shocking from one place to the next, but still don't always get a chance to.
Yeah. And Melvin, you too, you've spent your life in both continents, and I wonder, do you feel at home in both? Are you still at all shocked in either of them?
Well, I've been to now more than 40 countries in Africa. I've been to Mali. I've been to Ouagadougou. I've been, so I go to Africa just like other people might go to Chicago. No problem. When I know I got a trip coming up, just a matter of when I'm going to pack, how I'm going to move. It doesn't matter about the language. I speak a good 3 or 4 languages. That'll get you across Africa. The hard part for me was coming back home to Rockford, Illinois. And even to this day, I could take 2 days there. When I tell people when I go home, I'm gonna be there for 2 days. And I can't, after that I get nervous. Like I feel like claustrophobic. So I'm in Washington now. I live about a half a mile from the White House and a half a mile from the U.S. Congress. And Washington is a really international city. Everybody here is from somewhere, and so I feel real comfortable here. The conversation is always global, it's the nature of Washington. But I do ask myself, could I live anywhere else? If I had to pick a place to want to live other than Washington, it would probably be Denver. I like Denver. I like the people. I like the mountains. I found Colorado to be just a wonderful place and wonderful people. But it does make you wonder. I look at some of the insecurities of our country now, and I'm very nervous about that. We just came off of 4 years of the Trump administration, and it really, partisan is, politics is one way or the other. I work with Republicans as well as I work with Democrats. The best president I worked with was George W. Bush on Africa. People can't believe it. And when that guy took the office, he could not even find Africa on a map, but he turned out to be the best president we've ever had on Africa. So, for us, it goes up and down, but the last 4 years were kind of shocking, even for those of us who are hardened. And you become to ask yourself, do you want to, I could easily live in Africa. There's many countries in Africa, Namibia, Botswana, that I would want to, I'm thinking about, okay, maybe that's my retirement strategy. I would be more comfortable in Africa to a certain extent than I would be here. And more Americans are now looking globally as opposed to thinking that they got to live in the United States and they got to, do all the. I think it's going to be important for us as a country to shift. The world is becoming much more interconnected, and all these issues that we're dealing with, be it COVID-19, be it environmental crisis, all of this is global now. And so we're going to have to figure out a way to think globally as we try to evolve as human beings.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let me take 1 second to remind everyone who's listening here that we are going to open it up to question and answer here. So please feel free to put some questions in the, what do you call it?
Chat box.
In the box, in the question box.
Do you mind if I add something about the last question?
Yeah, please do.
A little bit of an aside, but I was thinking when I first was debating moving to Nepal to live in Kathmandu, I was super nervous about like, okay, I'm gonna leave. My friends are all gonna forget about me, and I'm not gonna see my family. It's about halfway around the world from Denver. It's a 12-hour time difference. They're not gonna talk to me. I don't know anyone there, all these things were issues. And what turned out, which is what my hope was that I became closer to my friends, because when I would come back here, I would stay with them. I had tons of time on my hands to watch their children and be with them more. And I spent more time with my family in those years because I would come back and have the freedom to do that when I was in my off time. So if you're considering going abroad and trying out your curiosities, I think those things are maybe something that you shouldn't let hold as much fear in your mind as I was letting it do at the time,
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I think it's scary for anyone, and Hawa, you can probably jump in on this too. It's scary for anyone to go abroad and think about leaving your family, but especially today, especially with what we're able to do right here on the computer, you really don't have to leave your family and friends anymore. But like you say, when you do see them, I think you probably are even closer than before. Hawa, what about you? How was it? I think when you were a student, were you able to stay connected with your family?
Yes, I would say that what was difficult was the time zones. The time difference can be challenging. Sometimes your friends are going to bed while you're waking up, but it's a matter of getting organized. Sometimes I would be in the library and I would take a 1-hour break to chat with my parents before they go to bed, or I would schedule Sunday Skype with everyone. So on Sunday, they knew that I was gonna bug them and they had to be there for me. So, but yes, today we have the opportunity to stay at home and get the experience of traveling. But I would say even at home, sometimes you can reach out. There are so many clubs and campuses, on college campuses. I was an international peer mentor the first 2 years of my college life, and we had a club for international students. So on your campuses, I bet you would find those nexus of people who are interested in learning more about different countries and sharing food. I remember we would try out food from different countries. We would have Fridays where we would have Ethiopian food, or on the 5th of May, we would have Mexican food. And so even at home, you can go out of your comfort zone and meet people who might not necessarily, and specifically in the United States, you have so many different groups. So you have the opportunity to stay at home and still connect with people. Yeah.
If I can add something, I think about Africans sometimes who come to the United States. And I've known Africans who arrive here in November or December and land in New York City and see snow for the first time. I mean, to me, that would be the most frightening thing. How do you deal with this ice and cold? And, you have a light jacket. And, I think about sometimes the adjustment that others have to make when they come here. And sometimes we see it as it's going to be it's on us. How do we adjust? When I first went to Africa, it was hot. And so it took a while. It didn't take me long, but it took a while to get adjusted to the heat. But when you look at it the other way around, and sometimes I can imagine landing in Denver in January and you got one of those blizzards. Wow, that must be absolutely shocking for anybody coming from a warm climate.
Very true. So question, I'm going to let whoever wants to answer this answer it. For someone who's thinking about switching careers, and you are all candidates to answer this question, switching careers and getting into something more global, what would be the one key bit of advice that you would give? And you've already talked about the need to be open, the need to be willing to take risks and be curious. What about in terms of actual action steps? Is there something that you can recommend?
Are we assuming that this is a young person or a
early career? Yeah, I think so.
It's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, I look at people all the time who now are fired up, because my job is to get people interested in Africa. I get people in meetings say, "Oh, I want to go," and they're 65 years old and 75 pounds overweight and never been to out of this country. Would I advise them to go to Africa? No. I would advise them to become educated about Africa. I would advise them to make contributions to support Africa, but to actually physically get on that airplane and try to change careers, absolutely not. So some of this, you got to make the decision while you're young. Now, I think for a mid-level person, if they want to go into private sector stuff and try their hand at doing business, there's all kinds of business opportunities in Africa where you can go and spend time there. Same time, be the U.S. side, the supplier side. I think there's opportunities in the private sector for a person who decides that they want to become global, let's say midway into the career. But to start off from zero and go to Kathmandu, I'm not sure about that, Lindsay.
Lindsay did it.
Yeah, I went for it. I was in the middle of my career, and I think sometimes you just get an obsession and you realize like I would so basically I split between having very wealthy interior design clients and having the total opposite end of the spectrum clients, and I was building houses for both of them. And I loved it. It was so great to have this dichotomy going on, but it took me, as of this year, I am not doing design anymore. And Nevis is 7 years old. So it took quite the transition to move from one career to the next. But I would advise, like, dive in, go see who is doing what you're interested in doing, go volunteer for them, maybe go to the country for a visit and see what you think of it, or, just get involved, look around, see what's going on in the realm that you want to work in, and learn from others. I think you can learn a lot from other businesses or nonprofits that are doing what you find interesting, and just kind of getting involved with them if you can, and see if it's a good move for you. Also, another good thing to do is calculate the math behind the shift, like how much is it going to take me financially to do this? And is that feasible? And maybe it is. It was for me. I've mathed it out and I was like, okay, if I live in Kathmandu, I can do this for a while. And then I had to figure out how to get some income coming in on a stronger sense when I had to be back in the US, but it ended up working.
Well, maybe you can take this next question from Tiara. What do you think about the growing movement for community-based and participatory development? With these growing movements, is there a place for community outsiders or expats to continue doing global work?
Yes, because
there's always room.
I mean, sincerely, that's literally what we do today. It's oftentimes we have international experts working with national experts, because we believe that in project management for development, there is tangible and intangible outputs. And as I said, it's about transferring knowledge. And we believe that the more diverse the group of people, the more creative the outcome, and the project benefits from that. So oftentimes we have international experts working with national experts to design tools or to produce documents, and to work alongside of our national partners to implement solutions. But it's always with in mind that one needs to also be culturally sensitive. That's the line. It's about understanding the context in which you are going to work. And that's what I would say, that desk research are helpful and there are beautiful things. I recommend it, absolutely. But what most of my co-panelists said, it's also a good idea to go to the place that you want to work in. Really important, because there are things that you cannot learn by doing desk research. It's just not feasible. And so maybe you want to get in touch with someone who is in that country and will work there, or someone who is in the field that you want to enter. That's really important. But it's impossible today to say that we will keep working with only national. I mean, community-based solution does not mean that it only comes from the community, right? And that's something that I had to come to accept myself, because during my education, I always thought that as a facilitator, my sole purpose was to help people get there. But there is also this thing where when you've been in different places, you gather knowledge and experience, and that's why you are called to be a consultant, because there are things that you have seen that can help people find solutions. And so absolutely, there is still place for international expertise to be brought in. It's just about the way that it's done, the methodology.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to do one more question, and if one of you can give like a 2-minute or 1-minute answer, because we're almost out of time here. The question comes from Byron. As someone with a master's in global management, While searching for opportunities and work, I have found it a struggle to make connections or get beyond the obstacle of software or programs that dictate whether you will be considered or not. So in other words, get beyond the computer. As software becomes a bigger part of job search and career development and selection, do you have any recommendations or resources for individuals that are often running into this wall or obstacle? Can someone give us a 1-minute answer on that? How to get beyond being considered?
I can do the 30-second answer, and I'll save some time for my part. But I think it's important that you network. And it seems to me with LinkedIn and with Facebook and all the social media, it's not nearly as difficult as it used to be. I actually advise literally thousands of people in the course of a year who send me an email and ask me something. I think also the situation now is that in the case of Africa, there's a lot of talented people who are living on the ground in Africa. Many of them have been, like Howard, have been to the U.S. It's important to start to build these networks and to connect with people who are actually doing it. But there are people like myself who will advise, give you a short, idea, maybe make a connection for you. So I don't think it is that difficult, but a lot of it has to do with networking skills.
Thanks, Melvin. Lindsay, Hawa, Melvin, I want to say thank you so much. This has been great hearing about your pathways from global education to global career. I wish all of you the very best. Let me now turn it back over to John Krieger. Are you there? There he is.
I'm here. Thank you, Insa. And thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your stories, your career paths, and your fascinating global accomplishments. While we enjoy getting together in person and hope to do so again very soon, events like today and our virtual exchange programs that we've been conducting for the last year allow us to connect with professionals and leaders all around the world and learn from your experiences, and we're so happy to be able to do that. If you enjoyed today's program, we're going to post it on YouTube and on our social media channels, and we encourage you to share it out with your networks. And finally, if you're interested in advancing your global education and your global career, the sponsors of today's events, StudyColorado and WorldDenver, we're here to help. And we have resources and information on our websites and our social media channels. You can also join the WorldDenver Young Professionals Program, which will give you access to our globally focused WorldDenver events, and also a network of young people, students, and potential employers that are here on the international scene in Colorado. And please mark your calendars for our upcoming Young Professionals event on May 19th with international experts and advocates working to raise awareness on the Uyghur crisis in China. That's on May 19th, and you can register for that free community event today. So finally, thanks again to our panelists, Hawa, Lindsay, Melvin, Inta, and StudyColorado, and we will see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.